I call Jackie Dean.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I want to commence my contribution to the second reading of the Judicature Modernisation Bill by congratulating the former Justice and Electoral Committee, chaired very ably by Scott Simpson, for producing what is by any measure a weighty tome, and I've promised to share it around my colleagues because it is quite a big document, and there's often a cry across the House, have you read the bill? Hand on heart, in the time that I've had today, I have not had time to read this bill. However, I hope I do have enough of an insight and understanding into the issues it has canvassed through its passage through the Select Committee to begin to make a contribution. And the first comment I would like to make is one of the overarching principles of this bill, of the Judicature Modernisation Bill, is to make access to the court system and to justice more accessible, more streamlined, and more in line with what is increasingly becoming common practice in the public service, but also in amongst the judiciary and in the law fraternity. And so if one were to go into any law office around New Zealand, there would be a flat screen set up in the library with the ability to do video conferencing so that the legal profession can have good dialogue with their clients or with other counsel, which would have the great benefit of their clients of not having to travel at some expense and time to be connected. And it is interesting that our court system remains the one last bastion of the paper-based system, and I also acknowledge that there's a lot of tradition around that, and the sight of a judge stamping things from the bench is something that they probably enjoy doing, and it is part of the chatter of the courtroom, which has been so for 100 and however many years that we have had court sittings in New Zealand. I've failed, I should have known that off by heart, but it is a proud tradition, and one that is upheld both by those who work in the court registrars, the bench of course, but also judges in New Zealand. However, time has moved on, and we now have, for example, a police service who have made the transition from waiting behind the desk in their little outpost in the suburb waiting for trouble to come to them. They've got out from behind that desk and they are now out in the community armed with an iPhone and a laptop and an attitude that says we will get out in front of trouble, and that is called prevention first in terms of the police, and that is what we are moving through the offices of this bill with the judiciary. So the focus is going away from a paper-based system beloved by many into a more modern approach, which ensures a more streamlined process through the court system for all those involved, but it also has the added benefit of cutting down on cost. And if I think about perhaps in my own patch, perhaps in Alexandra, where there is a court, and if someone were to be called to the court on a court sitting day for perhaps a traffic offence or some charge, assault, it could be anything, and that person happens to live 100 kilometres away, it's a lot of time and it's a lot of expense for somebody to go for perhaps a 5-minute court sitting, which might even be adjourned. They've taken a day off work if they are in work. They've paid something round trip plus lunch. Gosh, 100 kilometres, you're looking at $40, $50 to do that. Whereas I'd like to think we are moving to a system, and we're well on the way. I've seen it already in some courts throughout New Zealand where appearances can be made via video conferencing. And just as that is a quantum leap forward, so it is for prisoners in custody and perhaps in remand, where there are a number of brief but necessary court appearances to be done, and due to some of the legislative changes which this government has brought through, and we've tightened up laws around strip searching to keep prisons a safer place for everybody involved in prisons. We now have a very clear regime of strip searching. So whenever a remand prison is called from Milton Prison or any other prison around New Zealand to go to court for a 5-minute court sitting, that involved a whole day. It involved a strip search, coming back into the facility. It would be a lengthy drive in a van with an escort. There would be police at the court, and then the trip would be reversed on the way back. Now that is expensive and it is timely. There is danger there, that there is a danger that contraband or weapons can be reintroduced, drugs into the prison environment, notwithstanding the strengthened regime of strip searching. So the modernisation, and I've just touched on one aspect of it here, but the modernisation of the court system embodied in this Judicature Modernisation Bill is bringing benefits not only to the public at large, but also to those that work within the court and prison system and to those who come in touch with the reality of interface with the court system. So fundamentally, this bill implements reforms which are in response to the Law Commission's report review of the Judicature Act 1908. It's a pretty old act, well overdue. And I started my contribution, Mr. Speaker, acknowledging the work of the Select Committee, and I want to do that again because I understand the Select Committee, the Justice Select Committee, considered this bill for months. And as you can see with the bill that sits before us today, it was a big piece of work covering many aspects. And so in the due course of this bill going through the House, the bill will be divided at committee stage, still to come, so that Part 1 becomes the Senior Courts Bill, Part 2 becomes the District Courts Bill, Part 3, the Judicial Review Procedure Bill, Part 4, the Interest on Monies Claims Bill, 5, Electronic Courts and Tribunals Bill, 6, and that goes into 7 separate bills as a result of amendments to their own respective acts. And on top of that, there are 3 statutes to be repealed as a result of this work, and that is the Supreme Court Act of 2003, the Judicature Act of 1908, and the Unconsolidated Judicature Amendment Act. I hope David Parker is speaking in because he can make probably more sense with some of these pieces of legislation. But nonetheless, I draw this. No, David Parker was not around in 1908. That's unfair. That is unfair. But I do acknowledge David Parker over the other side of the House, his far more in-depth knowledge. Yes, yeah. I must tell my husband that David Parker wishes to go tramping with him. He'll be thrilled.
We've had that before.
He'd rather go fishing, but that's just by the bay. So Mr. Speaker, this is a second reading speech. I really have not delved too much into the substance of the bill. I've merely picked out 1 or 2 aspects of this bill as a member who wasn't overly familiar with the Select Committee consideration. But I think if we want to consider what benefit this bill, and what a temptation it would be to thump it on the way through, but I won't do that. So the overriding message I think we should take out of this bill is that the judicial system is working well, has served us well for many, many years. However, the Act is due for review. It has been reviewed. It is coming in line with other aspects of the public service in New Zealand, particularly in the justice area, with courts modernisation, with modernisation of corrections, also with the police modernisation. It is a good bill. Once again, it shows this government's focus on good public service, and I commend it to the House.